Hey everybody, today is February 20th, so we'll be looking at February 19th MTG stocks. So you got a little bit of a price increase here. Nothing else too noticeable here. These were kind of weird increases. We'll go over a couple of those. And then another kind of huge increase was this REAP, which we'll get into that price increase as well. It's kind of a funny situation on that. It's one of those not very natural increases, and well, sort of natural. It depends on what you look at, but as you can see, aside from a couple of big jumps here, nothing too crazy. So let's go ahead and get into our first card of the night. First card of the night is Siphon Mind. Siphon Mind went from 134 to 207. Siphon Mind costs 3 colorless, 1 black. It's a sorcery, and each other player discards a card. You draw a card for each card discarded this way. So it's I like this card only in the sense of you're paying 4 mana and you're basically having a 5 card turnaround, I should say. So you play Siphon Mine, and if you have 3 opponents, which in Commander that's what you're kind of going for, is having this when you have 3 opponents. You know, if you only have 1 opponent, this card's pretty bad. Well, it's not very good. 2 opponents it's okay, and 3 opponents is pretty optimal. But basically, if you have 3 opponents, we're going on the assumption of 3 opponents here. You're going to make them each discard 1 card, assuming they have a card in hand, which you should probably wait for that. And then if they do, then you get to draw a card for each one discarded this way. So basically, they will lose 3 cards, and you will gain 3 cards, but you have to keep in mind that Siphon Mine is a card in your hand, so you're really, like, card advantage wise, you're only getting 2. But when you count on the fact that you're making people lose 3, it's almost like a 5 card advantage in some senses. So it's pretty good. And the other thing about this is that you can see this, well, okay, we put this in a discard deck, you know, like you're trying to make people discard cards out of their hand, but it actually is kind of counterintuitive to that almost, depending on how good you are at discarding their hand. Because if you get Siphon Mine and you've somehow you've somehow made everybody's hand go down to 0, then Siphon Mine will pretty much do nothing for you. That's still kind of like an edge case, I'd say. I'd say people probably would still have a few cards in their hand, but that's something to think about if you have this in a discard deck, is this would be better early on when people still do have cards in their hand. But the one thing I don't like about it, even though it is very good card advantage and you're getting 3 cards for 4 mana and basically no downside except for if you have less opponents, is that I don't generally like making people discard cards in their hand. So you have to kind of think of that effect. Is your group okay with that? Like, you know, discarding cards in your hand isn't like the worst thing, but it could be annoying, especially if a whole discard deck like I was talking about earlier. But that's play to group dependent, and I would say, like, I probably wouldn't worry about that too much, because honestly it's a pretty good card. You could probably put this in a lot of black decks and be pretty good with it. So, and let's see, art wise, it's kind of weird because so you have this guy, I guess, and I guess he just doesn't have a head, but he's taking the mind out of this guy. I don't know, is this supposed to be like a headless monster thing? I think it starts with a D, like a Druagar. Can't say its name, don't know what it is, but something like that. Kind of interesting. I never really thought about that. He just didn't even have a head. Dullahan. That's what I'm thinking of, I think. Yeah. So. When temper runs high, it's easy to lose your head. Amazing. Amazing text. But anyways, let's go to the second card here. This one's REAP. This was the high price spike that we saw during the week. This went from $2.80 to $12. And REAP costs 1 colorless, 1 green. It's an instant. And you can return up to X cards from your graveyard to your hand, where X is the number of black permanents target opponent controls as you cast this spell. So kind of the idea of this is that usually in Commander, people are going to play black cards. And with REAP, even if someone only has 1 or 2 cards on the field, it's basically it's pretty good. I mean, 2 mana, instant speed if you just want to kind of surprise people, I guess. But the fact that you could probably get 1 or 2 cards pretty easily, but potentially way more, it's pretty nice. It depends on your kind of like outlook on that, I guess, is because I generally don't like very specific spells in the sense of, like they have to have black permanents or this card is worthless. I generally am not a fan of that. I think regardless, it's still pretty good. And the other thing that you can think about is if you have a deck that likes discarding cards or has a use to discard cards, this might be something to look into, because even if it is a dead card technically, if you have a benefit from discarding cards, then this may not be a bad idea. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is it's like some sort of book, like Book of Necronomicon. I'll put it down below, but basically you can pay 1, discard a card, put a counter on it, and then when it has 3 counters on it, you can tap it, just sacrifice it, and then you can put all creatures from, I believe, your graveyard onto the battlefield. So if you have something like that in your deck, then Reap, even though it could be a dead card, you still have a huge benefit from it if you have other cards that interact with that. But I guess the other kind of interesting thing to talk about here is that the reason why this did increase in price is because recently there was a Command Knights episode and they specifically talked about this, and I didn't really think much about it, and I was kind of like looking around like, why did this increase? But I was like, oh yeah, that card was definitely on there, and so someone probably went around and bought it out. So I would say that this card will probably go down fairly, not super quickly, but it'll go down back to a more normal price. And since it was 280 before, it may not return to 280, but it'll probably slowly go back down. So don't worry about it too much if you really wanted to get a Reap. Let's go ahead and go to our third card of the night, which is Swarmyard. Swarmyard went from $17.17 to $21. And Swarmyard is kind of interesting because I usually don't like talking about lands too much, but this one has it's a little bit interesting. So basically Swarmyard is a land. You can tap it and add a colorless, or you can tap it and you can regenerate target insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. And so the reason why I find this interesting is that, I mean, the Swarmyard idea is pretty neat. Insects, rats, spiders, and squirrels. The squirrels were a little bit weird, only because like I don't really think of a Swarmyard having squirrels. I'm thinking more like can't think of the name of what they're called, but basically the more eating like dead flesh and etc. So I mean, as you can see on here, like you have crows and etc. And it makes more sense like decaying and blah blah blah. I don't really see squirrels as eating decayed stuff. Maybe, I don't know much about squirrels. So but regardless, the reason why I like this card is that it kind of focuses on these less done tribals. And so like rat is probably why this card is expensive, but rat is probably the most prominent of these 4 because you can actually make a pretty decent commander deck out of them, and it can be pretty rough for other people. But like insect it's one of those things where usually it's just like insect tokens, so you could regenerate an insect token, which is kind of whatever. Spiders is probably the second own tribal. It's not like, I don't think it's a great tribal, only because most of them are fairly weak and they have reach, and that's pretty much their upside. I still like the idea of spider tribal, and I hope I can kind of like make one of those decks someday. And squirrel, I mean, it's weird that squirrels is here to me, but I still like that squirrels is here because squirrel tribal, which probably shouldn't be a thing, I'm sure is a thing, and I love the idea of squirrels, and I wish they would put more squirrels in the game, but usually that's more for the like unsets. They like doing squirrels and etc. But I guess like the kind of weird thing to me though is that this went up to like $21 or so, and it's just so weird that this very, very specific card for not super defined tribal is so expensive. And I think it's just because that you don't have to pay anything. You can just tap it and get a regeneration. And I also think it's because of the rats. And this could have increased because of the recent secret layer. And we talked about that a lot now, I feel. But I feel like that's kind of like a reason why this increase is because of that rat layer, or rat secret layer. So that's my guess, but I'm not sure. So going to go to our fourth card of the night, which is Awakening Zone. Awakening Zone went from 674 to 599. This is it's kind of interesting because this card was like only $2 or $3 until recently, I feel. And I thought it was a pretty good card when I bought it because I got this for a Prosh deck and as a token, not a food chain Prosh, but a more of a just token matters Prosh. And I think I've talked about that before. But let's go and look what Awakening Zone does here. It costs 2 colorless and a green. It's an enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. It has sacrifice this creature, and you add 1 colorless. So the reason why this is kind of nice, I mean, it's not like a huge deal in the sense of, okay, you can basically get like either a 0/1 blocker every turn, or you can add a mana every turn. You can kind of look at this like Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom is a weird comparison only because Bitter Blossom allows you to make 1/1 flyers, and you can probably do a lot more with that. Bitter Blossom is very, very good. But the reason I like this one is because when you look at Corvold is getting pretty popular nowadays. If you look at Corvold or something, he gets a huge benefit off of things being sacrificed. So this Awakening Zone with Corvold can essentially, of course it can allow you to ramp into Corvold faster, but it also allows you to save up these tokens, and then when you need them, you just be like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice off 3 of these. And if you have Corvold out, you're like, oh, well, I guess I will also draw 3 cards. And so when you get huge benefits off these sacrifices and things like that, I think this is where it comes in really, really good, just because it's not a sacrifice outlet per se, but it gives you a sacrifice effect, which are a lot of things that trigger on death sequences or sacrifice triggers or whatever. So Awakening Zone, pretty good. Kind of hope it keeps going down though, because I wish a lot of cards would go down, only because it's like, it'd be nice to be able to like put these in a lot more decks. But when they start going up, $5 usually my limit, and something for like Awakening Zone, I'm like, maybe, but this would be a very, very specific deck like Corvold or Prosh, and that's probably one of the few reasons I would buy this card. So for Awakening Zone, it's $5 mark is just a little bit high for me. For other people, it's probably fine, but still, it's a good card, and it's one of those things where you have to decide like, how good is this for my deck? Like for Corvold, I would say this is very, very good. For something like Prosh, like I had before, it's okay. It's not like amazing, even though it is a tokens matter deck. But like I think for Corvold, you could probably justify it a little bit better. So let's go ahead and go into our Commander of the Night, and our Commander of the Night is Morophon the Boundless. Morophon the Boundless costs 7 colorless mana. It is a 6/6 legendary creature shapeshifter. It has Changeling, and Changeling just means that he is every creature type. So he is a dragon, he is a spirit, he is a rogue, he is blah blah blah. He is a squirrel technically too. But the other abilities that Morophon has is when he enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. So you can choose kind of whatever you want. Let's say spirit in this case. And it says spells of the chosen type you cast cost Wooburg less to cast. So if you chose spirit, that means all spirits will cost Wooburg less. And if you were to choose dragons, they would cost Wooburg less. Now the other thing about this is that it says this effect reduces only the amount of colored mana you pay. So if we take something like Niv Mizzet as an example, then Niv Mizzet, he cost Wooburg. And if we chose dragons with Morophon, and with this ability, Niv Mizzet will basically cost 0 because he costs Wooburg, but you reduce cost by Wooburg. So 0 mana, pretty good. Now, if you were to instead cast a creature that had 2 colorless and 2 green in its cost, then it only reduces cost by 1 green. So it doesn't reduce all colorless costs as it says here. It's basically just you remove that one kind of like color from the cost. So in this case, you're going to reduce it to 2 colorless and 1 green. Now, the other thing is that it gives other creatures control of the chosen type get +1/+1. This is pretty useful. It's not like a huge, like this isn't the main thing really. I mean, it's still pretty good, especially if you're going for just general tribal. And that's kind of the reason why I like Morophon, is that he's pretty much, if you're going for a Wooburg deck and you want tribal, then Morophon's kind of the go-to monster boy. He basically makes any kind of tribal a little bit more viable, just because it allows you, I mean, the +1/+1 is okay, but reducing costs can be pretty good. There's a lot of good things about Morophon here, and kind of like, we're talking about Niv Mizzet costing 0, and kind of the good thing about that is that, what if you can give this effect to everybody? What if everybody could just cause 0? And we'll go into that with our random card of the night, which is Fist of Suns. So, Fist of Suns is a 3 colorless artifact that says you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. So basically, with Morophon, so in my case I'm calling spirits, I will call spirits. Now all my spirits cost Wooburg less. And if I have Fist of the Suns out, I can instead pay Wooburg for all my spirits. So I can pay Wooburg and then reduce their cost by Wooburg, and now all my spirits cost 0. There are a lot of things you could do with that. You could probably do infinite combos, or etc., etc. The thing that I like to do, or not say I like to do, but like an example of one like really nice thing with spirits, there are the Moyajin cards. Moyajin is basically, they have one for each color, and basically Moyajins, they come into play. They have a divinity counter on them. As long as they have a divinity counter on them, they're indestructible. But it also has a thing where you can remove a divinity counter and you get some sort of effect. And by the way, these are spirits, and they're also from Kamigawa, like most spirits feel like. And so, of course, I love Kamigawa. But the for instance, the effect of the blue Moyajin is if you remove his divinity counter, you get to draw a card for each permanent on your battlefield. So if you're in late game and you have Morophon out, you have Fist of the Sun out, you can basically just be like, hold on, I'm going to draw like, including your land and everything, you have a pretty good possibility of drawing like 12 cards, maybe more, maybe less, depending. But I mean, still, regardless, drawing, maybe 10 cards, 20 cards, whatever, it could make you win the game. It's very possible. I've done it before to where like I drew a whole bunch of cards. Sadly, I wasn't able to win that game only because I had like 3 life left and I used a lot of my mana to cast other things, so it wasn't quite what I needed, surprisingly somehow. But that's I have kind of a weaker spirit deck anyways. But when you have these kind of interactions, when you just cast stuff for free, it's pretty spooky. I mean, like, if you have tutors in your deck, you can get that Moyajin and then cast it for free. And the good thing about the Fist of the Suns of Morophon is that all the Moyajins say that like you only get a divinity counter if you cast it from your hand, I believe. Either cast it or cast it from your hand, but since Fist of the Suns doesn't say anything about putting it into play, it's actually you're still casting it, then that effect still goes off. So there's a lot of good benefits with Fist of the Suns and Morophon, so a lot of cool things you can do. So yeah, if you like tribal, Morophon plus Fist of the Suns, good stuff. But let's go ahead and end off our night here with a couple of random cards. So our first random card will be, this is from the new set, Theros Beyond Death. So Euphemia, the cacophony, yeah, okay. I can't English. So Euphemia, the cacophony, costs 1 colorless, 1 black. It's a 2/1 legendary enchantment creature harpy. Flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. It's okay. It's the weird thing about it is that I don't really think of black having like a huge enchantment theme. Like, usually like Bant, for instance, has some like really good enchantment themes, and or white in general. I mean, black of course does have enchantments, and they have some pretty good enchantments, but it's not like something that I think of the forefront. But I feel like you could do something interesting with this. I don't know if I'd ever make it my commander, because I'm just like, I mean, I guess you do get a 2-mana 2/1 flying. The only thing I could think of that you could do with this is that if you have like a sort of Voltron deck, what you can do is equip her with a bunch of enchantments, and then if she dies, then it doesn't really matter because all your enchantments go to your graveyard. You put her back out, you make a bunch of zombies over time, and then you can do other stuff with that. So it'd be like a sort of a creature token enchantment tribal deck, and it'd be interesting, but I don't fully trust it. But it's probably better as a one of, and probably not a commander. And if you were to probably go like maybe like Esper could probably do something with this, because Esper has a pretty good chance to stall out the game a little bit. So if you use like a little bit of stacks, and that way you can get some creature tokens over time and get some more blockers and etc. So it's not bad, but I don't think it's like too amazing or anything. So let's go and go to our next random card of the night, which is yeah, I love this art. So oh gosh, Wailuli? Someone can destroy me on my pronunciation of that, but Wailuli Wolf. Wily Wolf? No, surely not. Surely I know how to spell Wily, right? I don't know. Wailuli Wolf is a 1 colorless green. He's a 1/1 creature wolf. You can tap him, and target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is not amazing. It's a 1/1 that allows you to give something else +1/+1 until end of turn. I love Wolf Tribal. I think it's really like, wolves are just cool in general, but it's kind of hard to pull off only because a lot of the wolves don't have like a ton of attack, I feel, and then it's kind of like bears. And of course I like bear tribal as well, but it's one of those harder tribals to pull off. You can still play it, and as long as you're aware that your deck probably isn't going to be like super top tier, then it's fine. You could probably do like, you can still do like a decent deck with it, but it's not going to be top tier, I would say. I'm not guaranteeing that it won't be or will be, but I'm just saying like it doesn't seem like it's going to be top tier. But regardless of this wolf not being like great, I do love the art on this card. I don't know why. Like, it's just kind of like this old, it feels just like a painting that you would see kind of like some like art shop or something. Just kind of like this old style, and I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know if it's like funny to me. It almost looks like a meme to some degree, but I like it regardless. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed. Hope you have a good one. I'll see you next time.